We're joined today by Harry Fisher, Project Manager at Benchmark Mineral Intelligence. Harry, thanks for your time.
Thanks for your time, David.
Firstly, Benchmark. Many in the resources game have heard the name. What does the business do?
Yeah, so we're effectively a business intelligence organisation. We started off as a price reporting agency, so that's kind of where we started about 7 or 8 years ago. And now we've kind of cover everything to do with the lithium-ion battery supply chain, really. Our kind of predominant functions, we still do price assessments. We do forecasting, consultancy, and more recently sustainability advisory as well. So really anything market-based within that supply chain we look at. So we do regular reporting, quarterly subscription services for lithium, cobalt, nickel, etc. More bespoke consultancy work, everything really within that supply chain. And the team's growing very quickly, so we're able to do more and more and look at the market in a lot of detail. Nickel
and cobalt is your focus. Let's look at nickel first. What's history telling us and what's the future look like?
Yeah, so I'm going to be presenting at the conference today about kind of what's been shifting in the nickel market recently. There's been a lot going on. You've probably seen in the press about there's been a lot of volatility in the LME, which is the kind of the typical trading platform for nickel. That's caused a lot of turbulence in the market, and as a result we've seen a little bit of a shift in the way everything's set out. At the same time, the rise of battery demand taking some of the share away from stainless steel, which has always been traditionally the big market for nickel. So it's a bit of a changing kind of dynamic for nickel at the moment, and that's creating a lot of opportunities for different parts of the supply chain. Particularly Indonesia have taken big advantage of changes in the structure, and that's what I'll focus a lot on in my presentation. The amount of growth in Indonesia is vast. I was there a couple of months ago looking at some assets, and there's been so much development in the last few years since they banned nickel ore exports in 2020, and the growth profile is incredible, really. So there's certainly going to be a big force in the nickel market for years to come, and it's really changing the whole structure of the market.
You talk about the changing structure of the market. What's the demand side looking like?
So the demand's still very strong. Like the overall thematic for lithium-ion batteries is the growth is huge, and that's really what's supporting all the work we do at Benchmark within the whole value chain. The big demand centre is electric vehicle demand growth, and that's gaining momentum more and more. It kind of started off in China, and now it's building in the US and Europe and other parts of the world. Even here in Australia, we're seeing a lot more electric vehicles on the road, kind of week on week. So that's really the bulk of the demand. Traditionally, it was all portable electronics, so your cameras, your mobile phones. That's a smaller part now. And another rising part is energy storage, so being able to store some say renewable energy, store it and use it later on. That's a kind of an up and coming market, but really the bulk of the market is electric vehicles, and those lithium-ion batteries going into those electric vehicles, they need nickel, they need cobalt, they need lithium. So there's a huge amount of demand growth for those raw materials, and that's what's driving this kind of wave of demand.
We're seeing a lot of investor interest in lithium in particular. Do you think investors haven't correctly judged the nickel demand side?
So I think there's a lot of interest in nickel, particularly in Australia and in Canada. That's the more traditional nickel sulfide deposits, which have kind of been the mainstay of the market for a long time, and that's flipped in recent years. We've seen more laterite development particularly in Indonesia. There's still certainly interest. The demand side's still very strong, but I think there's still a bit of concern about kind of the dominance of Indonesia and kind of how easy it is to get involved in that market from the investor side of things. So maybe that's the issue that people are looking at.
Looking at cobalt, the other area of specialty for you, again, what's the thematic looking like, and where have we come from, and what does the future look like?
So the demand side, fairly similar as for nickel. The major difference really is that the dominant demand driver is batteries for cobalt, whereas for nickel it's still very much stainless steel, and it's going to take a long time for batteries to take over. So for cobalt, there's a lot of battery demand growth. The major producer is the DRC, and that's come with a lot of issues over the years, and that's something that really isn't going to go away. But it's still a very important part of the supply chain, and they produce 70-75% of all cobalt globally. So very reliant on that within cobalt going into batteries. There's always a little bit of concern about substitution of cobalt in batteries, which has happened in recent years as more kind of cobalt-free chemistries have become more popular. But it's still going to have an important role to play for sure, and we'll still need further growth from places like the DRC, but also again Indonesia. The nickel that you're getting from a lot of those projects also produces cobalt as well.
And how are you seeing, you touched on in your intro, the growing element of sustainability and ESG within the benchmark business. How important is that when looking at the supply-demand elements of the commodities?
It's gained a huge amount of momentum in the last couple of years, and that's why we're doing a lot more work kind of on regular reporting, but also advisory services as well. It's still in the early days, and there's still kind of a little bit of disagreement maybe in the sector about kind of how important it is, but the fact of the matter is there's a lot more talk about it, and people are really taking it into account in investment decisions and how the market plays out. So it is important, but there's still a long way to go, and there's a vast spectrum of things that you need to look at. It's not just carbon, it's a variety of things, and that's what makes it quite complicated.
Well, Harry, thanks for your time. Great insights as always. Benchmark, the market leader in this space. We look forward to future reports and future analysis. Thank you.
Thank you, David.